This is my fourth video in the series, the 357 best GRE vocab words to know. This list wasn't compiled by me, it was compiled by Prep Scholar, and it wasn't done randomly. They looked at all the different words that had turned up in the Power Prep tests, as well as the Manhattan and Kaplan and other practice test materials, and compiled the list made up of all the words that occurred more than once. And this gives us the list we have before us. So these really are the best words you need to know. Of course, I've also added a link in the description not only to this list, but another list that's even longer. That's got 1,800 words, and that's if you've got time to learn even more than just 350. But a great start would be this list, and that's where we're going to start. Of course, if you like this video, do check out all of my other vocab videos. Now, for the letters in this list, there are no entries for J and K. So we're going to move on from the last video, which was on I, straight on to L with the word laconic. And what I think of immediately about laconic is someone who lacks words. Laconic. Someone who lacks words, speaks in a short, terse way. Just uses a few words instead of long words and quite abrupt, quite sharp, not using many words. They say reserved, succinct. Succinct is another great word. Short, not using too many words. Taciturn, not sociable. For those of you who don't know, I'm going to give my definition first without looking and how I use the word, and then we'll check it against what they say. To laud, that's to celebrate something. He lauded his victory, celebrated it. Usually you're doing it to someone else. I lauded her achievements. What do they say? Yeah, you're praising. Praising, celebrating something, usually someone else. Laudable. Well, if you're going to laud something, that thing must be laudable, praiseworthy, something worth celebrating. Just had a pigeon land not far from my microphone. But anyway, I'm going to carry on. What do they say? Praiseworthy, exactly. Okay. Litigation. That's to do with the law. Litigation is when you're suing somebody. That's how I understand it. Okay, their answer is more broad. Any legal proceedings counts as litigation. You don't want to be embroiled in all this litigation, all these legal proceedings, usually in a negative sense, right? You're not going to praise litigation too often. It's more like you're bogged down in litigation. Loquacious, talkative. I just thought of one, like quack, 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 like a duck, always talking. Loquacious, talkative. There you go. They used my exact word. I didn't look at that. I'm not looking on the right at all. And they used the exact same word. Someone who talks a lot. Garrulous, we saw in a previous vocab video on this list. Lucid is clear. Don't know how you'd remember that. But anyway, lucid I think of as very clear, articulate. They say clear and coherent. Often you're talking about a verbal bit of praise there. Her argument was lucid, very clear and easy to understand. I try to make these definitions lucid for you, the audience, clear so you can understand the words. Luminous is a nice one, bright. Luminous means bright, often bursting with light. The painting was luminous, it seemed like light was coming out of it. The room was luminous, bursting with light. They say full of light. Think of the word to illuminate, to bring light in, often in terms of understanding. I was illuminated by your argument. You're bringing light, you are bringing comprehension into something. Luminous, light again. I think there's even a measure of light, isn't there? Lumens. Anyway, you can look that up. Okay, let's move on. Magnanimity. That is usually associated with someone being victorious in battle and not lording it over someone, not rubbing it in. Being gracious, generous, not ruthless, heartless. There you go. Generosity and nobility of spirit. For example, someone's on the floor and instead of kicking them when they're down, you help them and lift them up if they're your opponent, for example. Next one, maladroit. That's the first one I wouldn't use myself. Maladroit. I know adroit means skillful and mal is bad. So I'm going to go for not being skillful or inappropriate. I'd have to check that one. Okay. Yeah, I was on the right line just through etymology. Clumsy, awkward, inept. You're not apt. You're inept. You're lacking skill. Remember, adroit means skillful. think that was a word in this list earlier. Mal, bad. So maladroit, not or bad at being skillful. Clumsy, awkward. Nice word. Not one I use though. Malign. What do we talk about with mal? The prefix? It's bad. So something that's malign is the opposite of something that is benign. Ben is good in terms of a prefix. Mal is bad. So to be malign is to be usually sinister, wicked, bad in some way. They've given the two definitions. It could be outright evil, harmful, or it could be to speak negatively about someone or something, to malign somebody. That's how you'd use it as a verb. She maligned my integrity by suggesting I did that. I think there's even a third definition, not one you'd need to know for the GRE, but you often talk about cancerous cells and are they benign or malign? And you want them to be benign, right? The good ones, not malign, the negative spreading ones. Anyway, malleable is changeable, moldable. You can mold it. That's how I remember the word. It doesn't look quite the same as the word mold, but it does start with an M. Malleable means moldable, shapeable, easily shaped. They say easily influenced, pliant or pliable. You'd have to know what pliant or pliable is, but pliant means, again, same as malleable. It's easily influenced, persuaded, shaped, coerced. Almost docile, like a pet. Maverick, great word. Maverick means a rebel, someone who's willing to breach orthodoxy. Not jump on the bandwagon, but they're willing to stand out and be different. It's definitely a praiseworthy thing to be a maverick. Obviously, some people can take it too far and then be an eccentric, almost like a weirdo, but a maverick would be more praising. An unorthodox person or a rebel. Orthodox means following the right rules, that's what ortho means. And unorthodox, someone who doesn't follow those rules, a maverick. Mendacity. Great way to remember that is it's the opposite of veracity, which means truth, or veracious, truthful. Mendacity, lying. Untruthfulness, as they say, dishonesty. Opposite of veracity, truthfulness, mendacity. To be mendacious, to be a liar. Mercurial, great word. Unpredictable is how I remember it. I think they originally thought that you were influenced by the planet Mercury or something like that. Either way, if you are mercurial, you are unpredictable, and that's that word fickle that they've got there. Capricious, easily changeable, not set in your ways. Not as passive as malleable, more active, scheming, unpredictable. Meticulous, great word that I use quite a lot. To be very careful and precise with details. Not lax, not making clumsy mistakes, being very careful, scrupulous and meticulous. They say paying close attention to detail, exactly. Misanthrope, great word. Anthro is like human, and that's where you get the study of anthropology, the study of humans and society. And if anthrope is human, mis usually means not or bad. For example, misunderstanding, misgivings, mistake. So a misanthrope is someone who is against humans, doesn't like other humans, doesn't like anyone. Specifically, women would be misogynist, but all people would be misanthrope, someone who just doesn't like other people, a person who hates humanity, they've said. Although obviously not ideal to be a misanthrope, a great word to know for sure. To mitigate something is to ameliorate, to soothe it, to calm it, or more specifically, to make a bad problem less worse. We need to mitigate the damaging influence of climate change. We need to do things to stop the worst effects of it. Their definition is, you're improving a painful, unpleasant, or negative situation. Not solving it, but you're at least improving it. You're lessening the damage, you're mitigating the situation. Okay, next one, modest. Most people know that in the sense of being a shy, quiet person who's not a rebel and doesn't do anything mischievous. They're a very modest individual. And also someone who doesn't boast at all. They just keep themselves. They're not arrogant. They're not even overconfident. They don't like boasting at all. They're very modest about their achievements. And that's their first definition, not boastful. But did you know the word can also be used to describe objects? A modest house just means one that's not over the top, not flashy, not showy, as they say, not ostentatious. So we're describing an object as one that doesn't really stand out. It's just a modest home. A modest village on the side of the hill. Just quiet, not over the top at all. So it can be used for humans in that first sense, or objects in the second sense. To mollify, great word, to soften, to mitigate, very similar to mitigate, usually about a person. To mollify someone is to calm them down. Often used in the context of someone being angry and you are calming them down. You're making them more placid, you are placating them. If someone is not easily mollified, they're not easily calmed down. Fairly unusual word, but a good one, and it sounds lovely, doesn't it? To mollify someone. Monotony. Much more common word than mollify, but monotony means one tone. Mono, one, tony, tone. If you speak in the same way, in the same tone the whole time, you are speaking monotonously. Often with a connotation of being boring, dull, monotonous. Definitely not praising something. Monotony, what do they say? Boredom, repetition, yes. If someone calls your argument monotonous, it's definitely an insult. Saying you're speaking in a very boring way and you're just saying the same things again and again and again. Which brings us nicely onto the next word, mundane. Everyday, not unusual. Again with a connotation of boring. Quotidian, I think, would be a nice word to go there. Although that's a fancy one, meaning occurring every day. Mundane is more negative. Oh, it's nothing unusual. My routine is so mundane. I wish I could do something special with my life. And even though it starts with the same three letters as munificent, the next word, it means something very different. Mundane is boring, every day, whereas munificent means generous. It's one of those rare situations where the etymology, the prefix, isn't helping us with the definition. Munificent is something great, generous, benevolent, munificent. Sounds quite a lot like magnificent, right? Which is also a praising word. Munificent is specifically someone who is generous, maybe engages in a lot of philanthropy, giving away. Philanthropy, by the way, philo, love, anthropy, as we saw earlier, human, anthrope. Philanthropy, someone who loves humans, gives money away to charity. That person could be described as being munificent as well, very generous. Naive, fantastic word. Notice there are two dots above the I in naive. It would take someone who knows a bit more about language to know why that's the case, probably has a French or German origin or something like that. But either way, there are two dots above the I there. You can investigate why if you're interested, and maybe tell me in the comments. Anyway, naive means someone who is gullible. They don't know enough about the world to realise what's actually going on. He thought she was being generous, but he was just being naive. She was manipulating him. She thought he had her best intentions at heart, but she was being naive. He was actually a malign influence, a bad influence. Just too innocent, displaying naivete, gullibility. As they say, someone who's inexperienced or gullible. They just don't know the world enough to know what's actually real and happening. Almost always with a connotation of being innocent, pure, naive. It's a derogatory word though, not a praising word. And finishing off here with the last few words. Nascent means just beginning, it's just starting, it's new, it's inchoate. That was a word we saw earlier, I think in the last vocab video. Nascent is just starting, it's not fully formed yet. It hasn't grown into its future self, it's just beginning. I guess you could say a baby is a nascent adult. They're not there yet, but they're just growing. Often you talk about an idea being nascent. You've just had parts of an idea in your head, but it hasn't fully coalesced into a proper idea. It's just nascent. It's just beginning, as they say, in the early stages. Neglect, that's a bad word. It means not caring about something enough to look after it. The building became overgrown through neglect. No one looked after it, tended to it, so it just fell apart. The relationship ended through the neglect of both parties. Not outright hate maybe, not outright violence or disagreement, just people not caring enough and things falling apart, usually quite slowly. Neglect. It's a negative word with that NEG starting, neglect. They say to abandon or leave uncared for. The next one's really fun, nonplussed. It means kind of off-put, or actually, what does it mean? I think it kind of means not plussed, right? Plus is a positive, nonplussed. I always forget, does it mean something negative where you don't like what's going on, or confused? This is the first word I'm not 100% sure. I guess you could say I'm nonplussed. Is it a negative word? I would bet, I'm not looking, I would probably bet that it means confused, not quite sure what to make of the situation. Got it, yes. Confused and baffled. I honestly didn't look at that. I always get confused with nonplussed, whether it means like it's a negative reaction, you're not plussed, you're angry, but actually no, it just means you don't have any reaction because you're confused. And you have no reaction, you're nonplussed because you just don't understand what's going on. You're confused, you're baffled. I guess you could say I was a bit nonplussed by what the word nonplussed meant. I was a bit confused about what it meant, but now I'm not. Now I know that nonplussed means confused, baffled. Okay, I can see coming up after notoriety is my favourite word probably in the whole English language actually. I might do later on a whole video on my top 5 favourite words. That sounds interesting. Leave a comment. Otherwise, let's get to it now. Anyway, first, notoriety. It's like infamy, famous for a bad reason. Her reputation was notorious. The notoriety of the school was legendary. Famous for a bad reason. Infamous, in other words. Fame for doing something negative or criminal. She was a notorious liar. I guess that wouldn't exactly be a crime, but I do think you can use the word not just for criminal activities. I often do. Most people talk about notorious even if they don't mean a criminal activity. She was notorious for always lying, for example. You could use that in conversation. Next word, last word in this list for today, nuance. It's an absolutely fantastic word I use all the time. It means the fine distinctions or subtle differences within something or between two things. It's a great way of praising something that's quite intricate or complex. She made a nuanced argument in favour of it. Not a straightforward, simple, bombastic argument, but no, it's nuanced, full of details, clarifications, maybe contrasts. Like on the one hand this, on the other hand that. It's a nuanced argument. Not just monolithic, just saying the same thing, or monotonous, boom, boom, boom. It's more like, well, there's this, but there's also that. There's this consideration, but there's also this consideration. It's not a negative word. It's not saying the person is nonplussed, confused. No, it's a praising word. The painting was full of nuance. Like you thought it might be saying this, the painting, but then the colours on this side are maybe suggesting that. Also, let's admit, it's a wonderful word to say, nuance or nuanced. And also it can describe anything, right? Her face was nuanced. You could tell she was happy, but also at the same time a bit shocked. She had a nuanced expression. Come on, you can use it anyway. You've got to admit that is an amazing, amazing word. Remember, it describes anything where there are subtle differences, slight contrasts, fine distinctions, intricate or complex details. Nuance. What an appropriate place to end today's list on the word nuance, my favourite of all English language words currently. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please do leave a like and a comment if you did, and I might be done with this list in 2 or 3 videos more.